What can we do to prevent it? What can we do to treat it? And what can we do to shift our mindset around it, maybe to make algae never be a problem for us to start with? So although algae is unsightly, it is actually contributing to the oxygen production in the aquarium, so it's not all bad. But sometimes you just can't let it be with algae, you know. It gets worse and worse, and that's when you need to take action. That's what we're doing today. Welcome to a new video where we're going to do a deep dive on algae with a specific look at the brown algae, or the diatoms, that's going on in this Algae Scapoline 60 Iwagumi aquascape, which I created I think about 4 weeks ago, planted originally. I thought I got away with it. I thought trouble-free startup, no dramas, all the hair grass seemed to be growing, and then gradually some of the hair grass was dying off. I've moved the tank a couple of times over the last few days. We've had a huge redecoration of the living space, and that's a whole new video. Tanks and the space looking great at the moment, apart from this tank here. So I thought I'd start off the series of videos coming from the new kind of gallery space with a problem. It's good to share our problems, isn't it? Show some vulnerability, and that's okay. You know, some of us struggle to share, you know, our darker moments or our troubles, you know, and we can relay this to algae, can't we? But it's nothing to be ashamed of, you know. Algae is a natural species that exists in symbiosis with like plant life, aquatic life, and you'll always have a level of algae in your aquariums. It's just a matter of how much. So how much algae is too much algae, question mark. You know, that is very subjective. You know, too much for one person is not enough for another. So that's the first thing to consider. You know, what is too much? What are you happy with? What aren't you happy with in terms of the algae that you're experiencing? So for instance, in here we've got the brown algae, which are otherwise known as diatoms. Now at the moment this is too much for me. I don't like it. You know, some of the plants have been uprooted. I did move this tank from the other side of the room last night, created a big mess. So a lot of this video is going to be dedicated to sorting this mess out. You know, without going into too much detail of all the distinct different types of algae and what's the best approach for each type of algae, I think it's better to look almost more holistically why we get algae in the first place. What can we do to prevent it? What can we do to treat it? And what can we do to shift our mindset around it, maybe to make algae never be a problem for us to start with? That's the kind of magic, when you stop actually putting a negative attachment to a perceived problem like nuisance algae. In my mind, if I see nuisance algae, it's just nature's way of telling me there's something that's happening in the aquarium which is resulting in this algae. That's not a good, I don't attach like a good or a bad feeling or emotion. It's just fact-based, it's objective data that you're dealing with. You've got this algae, look at why you got it, and then deal with the cause, and maybe not chase the symptoms so much. Let's look at this example here. We've got the brown algae on the rocks at the moment. To get rid of the symptom, you need to clean the brown algae. No problem, I can do that now. I can do that right now with a toothbrush. I can just brush that off. But if I don't change anything in the system, it's more than likely just going to come straight back again in a day or so. So I need to look at the cause, the root cause of why we're getting that brown algae to start with. And if you don't address that, it's just going to come back again. So the root cause will be, it's a relatively new system. I haven't been doing enough water changes. The ADA power sand and the Algae soil will have probably leached quite a lot of nutrients together. And therefore, without the water changes, the algae has the nutrients available to explode, and that's without a biologically mature system. You get typically these diatoms are one of the first occurring algae species that you'll get in an aquarium, so no surprise that we've got it now. Good news is it's very easy to remove. And once you've gone through a cycle of removing it a couple of times, after a week or two, it should have just, the system will be mature enough biologically for that brown algae not to come back again. It seems to thrive in this biologically immature system. So it's just a case of being patient, really, with regard to this brown algae or the diatoms. Do let us know in the comments if you've got any other ideas around it. Some folks suggest that silicates that you can get with some tap water or some sands maybe can trigger diatoms. I haven't any data on that myself, but there's a lot of anecdotal data, so that's something that you might want to consider. We'll jump into maintaining the tank. Next steps are going to be giving it a good clean, glass of course, give the dragonstone a brush with a toothbrush, remove as many of the dying plants as I can, probably with some tweezers, and just plucking them out and then netting off from the surface. That's probably going to take an hour or so. Some people might find that frustrating or boring, or find it a chore, but actually something for me is to do it with mindfulness and just really enjoy it. You know, perhaps put a podcast on or some music. If that's your thing, enjoy what you're doing. It's you, your creation, you know, you're physically touching your tool. You can even smell the aquarium, you can feel it, you can feel obviously the water, the glass, the metal of the tweezers. And we're going through this beautiful process of removing the dead, and that's given opportunity for new life. And this is the constant cycle that we go through whenever we're setting either a whole new aquascape up from scratch, effectively destroying it to do that again, or whether it's just a simple plant leaf that's regenerating. That whole process, the whole kind of cycle of rebirth, we can apply to so many different layers in this hobby and this life. I think this sort of thing is another good lesson in that sometimes you have to make something more ugly in the short term in order to get the full potential beauty in the longer term. You have to go through an element of suffering in order to appreciate the joy, period of chaos in order to appreciate the structure and peace. So it's this life's balance, isn't it? And if you try to upset the balance, if you try to have too much of one thing that's unopposed, too much comfort, for instance, you get used to that. If you then come across any level of suffering, it's much more acute if you're used to never suffering. It took me a while to realise that, and now I kind of can accept the levels of suffering that I've gone through in order to help achieve a sense of peace. And certainly through what we're doing now, maintaining the aquarium, it helps me achieve that peace, because in the short term is like, this looks horrible, it's disgusting, what am I going to do? You know, if I was a beginner and I suddenly saw all this cloudy water, I might panic and try to buy a chemical or a special gadget or some special treatment in order to try and, you know, magically cure the cloudy water. But all you actually have to do is just change the water or just wait. Yeah, there's a very well-known, I think there's a quote that says the best way to clear a muddy pool is to do nothing, just let it clear itself. If you try to stir it or clear a muddy pool, you'll just create more mud. So sometimes just letting it be is the answer. But sometimes you just can't let it be with algae, you know. It gets worse and worse, and that's when you need to take action. That's what we're doing today. This is all excess anubias that I've propagated from the Algae Highline 400 behind me here, and I've just torn off or
should say torn, removed portions, and then just wedged them in choice locations around the rocks. And some of them are getting more coated in algae than others, but the good thing is you can just literally take it out, give it a good clean, and then pop it back again. And then once the system's matured, the biological balance is established, the algae will not return so violently, I'm sure. Here you can see the diatoms, or the brown algae, building up on the glass at the front there. It's very soft, it does come off very easily. I use a old hotel room key, which is very effective. You can't really scratch the glass with these. I do like to use these. Here you can see some brown algae building up on the dragonstone in combination with some dying Eleocharis leaves. You see those brown dying leaves there. I'll try to remove as many of those as I can. So here's a close-up of the snail eggs, and I think they look beautiful, and it's really interesting, isn't it, what we perceive as pests or not pests. Most snails, in fact, in the aquarium do serve purpose. They eat detritus, they eat algae, they generally only eat rotting plants or dying plants. They tend to leave healthy plants alone. This, when their population grows out of control, I guess, when they start to kind of take over the aquarium and you see these white spots dotted all over the glass, it looks a bit unsightly. But in terms of the actual functional purpose, they don't do any harm at all. Injecting quite a high amount of CO2 in here. This is because I do have hard tap water, and I do find we need to use more CO2 versus people with softer water or reverse osmosis. Just pan across to the filter fitting, which is the Aquarium acrylic type. Where are we? Here it is. The water level's too low, obviously need to top it up during the maintenance. But this gives a very high velocity, good all-round circulation, which I find is ideal for iwagumis. It's really getting that CO2 around the tank and hopefully feeding all of the plants. I'm going to do a huge water change. All of that rubbish and algae, etc., that we've removed from the stone and the glass will now go into my garden. So this is really interesting because this is the first time this aquarium's been in this position. And obviously we're getting a lot of direct sunlight through this. Well, there's a skylight up here and there's the direct sunlight coming from there and striking through here. You can see it's going to be getting some very strong lighting there over that period. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any impact on the aquascape in the longer term. Get it near the top, not too near the top, because I'm going to get my hands right in there and then start removing the unhealthiest leaves. There's some healthy plants that I removed whilst I was moving the tank, so I'll split those up. It's a really interesting when you look into not even like algae as the actual species and the biology behind algae, but actually how we perceive algae as a positive or a negative thing in our aquarium, and what that says about us, what it says about our ability to keep an algae-free aquarium, if that's to be measured, and your ability to accept the algae or have a repulsion to it or an attraction to it. How does it make you feel? When you see an excess amount of what most people would regard as nuisance algae, and why does it make you feel that way? Is it cultural? Is it like an association that you see because you've seen it so many times on the internet? People labelling it as a bad thing, or is there something more inbuilt in us? Like I think we're all built with a fear of heights and a fear of spiders or something, or creepy crawlies, because of they presented obviously danger to us. And anyway, I'm rambling again. We're nearly to the top. I'll switch it off now.
Hi everyone. Don't know if it's just going to be a test, but yeah, seems a bit odd that we're filming our first video in the new version. Well, just the updated gallery basically again, but really significant changes. This time, moved all of the tanks. Painted a lot of the area and made a much more coherent theme running through the living space. So rather than being very distinct areas, it's more one kind of coherent living space with the aquascapes being featured throughout rather than just one gallery stroke studio. So the whole kind of living space is a gallery in essence, because we're really focused on using nature, plants, house plants, aquarium plants, in photos, books, in a way that hopefully helps us really enjoy where we live. And I work from home a lot more than I used to. My wife does. So why not make the home as beautiful a living space as you can, and incorporate, for me, the work into the home. So yeah, I'm really. We just finished today, so I'm really happy about it, and that's why I'm rambling on about it. I don't know if I'll publish this. But yeah, I've got to make lunch in a minute. But anyway, it's just an audio check. Hopefully it's worked.